Hey, this is Colin, and I just wanted to welcome you to the Faith Focused Marketing Podcast, a podcast designed for Christian business owners that are interested in building their business using marketing principles that last the test of time instead of chasing shiny objects and the fleeting winds of the new tactics that seemingly pop up day after day. If you're needing help with your marketing, feel free to visit faithfocusedmarketing.com. That's faithfocusedmarketing.com. And with that, let's jump into today's episode. Alrighty, welcome back. Just wanted to welcome you to the second episode of the Faith Focused Marketing Podcast. Today's episode, we're going to kind of break down some of the main principles of marketing, some timeless principles. I kind of alluded to that on the first episode, which was more of an introduction to who I am. And on this episode, we're going to kind of get our toes a little wet, so to speak, talking about what are some of those principles as it relates to marketing. So again, first things first, just wanted to thank you for coming back, joining me for another episode. And secondly, I should also mention at a high level, there's going to be lots of resources that I recommend on this podcast. But just keep in mind, any of these resources I recommend to you, always filter through the lens of Scripture, because not all of these people are Christians, and not all of these books or recommendations necessarily come from a directly Christian perspective. But like a lot of things, you want to, keep the good and spit out the bones, as they say. And it would be great, obviously, if there was lots of Christian authors that talked about marketing principles. But the truth is, there's just not many out there. But the other good news is that there are principles that are spoken about that are just principles, that are just true. And so we can certainly grab hold of those things and run with them. And again, filter everything out. So at least that's my encouragement to you. And of course, that's what I try to do. And anytime I'm reading business books or marketing books or learning from others that have been in the space of marketing or business that aren't Christians, you try to filter everything through the lens of Scripture, right? So that's my encouragement. So one of those books I want to share with you is a book called Scientific Advertising. It was written in 1923, believe it or not, by a man named Claude Hopkins, and he's kind of known as like the pioneer of what you would call direct response marketing, although truthfully, this type of advertising has probably really been around since the beginning of time, since the concept of trading with one another has been around, since the idea of business has been around. This type of marketing has probably been around that long, but this is one of kind of the original books which sort of lays the framework for what direct response marketing is. So again, this book is over 100 years old, and a lot of people at first glance would say, how could a book 100 years old be relevant today, especially with how things are changing and AI and technology and all of that. And the main reason it's relevant is because human nature really doesn't change, right? The way humans think and behave, right? Even sin nature itself, right, remains. And as it relates to business and marketing, the way consumers behave is really the same, right? And the basic principle is people are looking for what is best for them, right? No matter what it is, whether they're getting their roof replaced, whether they're buying a supplement, whether they're seeing a physician, whether they're buying a car, the main principle is people are looking for what's in their best interest, right? And as it relates to advertising, one of the biggest pitfalls I've seen business owners do is they run advertising that would be considered, I usually like calling it people building like call me campaigns, meaning a big billboard for Bob's Roofing Company with a big phone number that says call us, basically, right? And from the consumer's point of view, right, that advertising is really difficult, both for the business owner and the consumer, because the consumer's thinking like, well, what's in it for me if I call you, right? And for the business owner, again, they're just not going to get a ton of activity because, what's the benefit for the consumer, right? So now there's a time and a place for that type of advertising, call it brand advertising, the getting your name out there type of advertising. But for the majority of businesses, small, medium businesses, I would even argue large businesses, advertising that has a specific function to get a specific result really is important. So if you decide to pick up scientific advertising, you can grab it on Amazon for probably less than $10. You could also, I think it's in the public domain, so I think you can even get it for free online. But the first chapter of the scientific advertising talks about what genuine marketing is, and Claude argues that, and this was 100 years ago, that proper advertising, number one, is built on fixed principles, which he goes on to explain kind of what those principles are. And also he explains that advertising should not be looked at as a gamble. So for a lot of businesses, and I haven't been in business for decades and decades, but a lot of folks that have gone through recessions and tough times, a lot of times the first thing that gets pulled when you're trying to cut expenses is the advertising budget, because inherently a lot of business owners look at advertising as an expense, not an investment. They look at it as something that's risky, that they don't really know if it's helping. It probably is, but they're not too sure. And Claude argues that type of advertising shouldn't even really be thought of anymore. And the reason he says that is because at the time, they had really been working with and practicing results-based advertising. And during his time, a lot of what they were doing was coupon-based tracking, right? So they would create a campaign for, and he had lots of different clients. Some of it was physical product-based clients, some of it was service-based clients, but a lot of times the call to action was having a consumer, take a coupon directly to a grocery store to buy the product, or filling out a form and mailing it back to the business to have somebody reach out to them, have a salesperson visit them at their home. And so basically, he sort of pioneered the coupon or the results, the objective measurement type of marketing, right? So spend $1, how many dollars come back? We mail out these letters to homes promoting this free offer. How many respond back? Of those people that responded back, how many were we able to visit with? Of those people that we visited with, how many turned into customers, etc. And 100 years ago, he really was focused on building results-based, measurable, and trackable marketing. And so his argument was, if you open up the book to chapter 1, he talks about this quote he has. It really is actually on the first page. He says, "The time has come when advertising has in some hands reached the status of a science. It's based on fixed principles, and it is reasonably exact. The causes and effects have been analyzed until they are well understood. The correct methods of procedure have been proved and established. We know what is most effective, and we act on basic laws." He goes on to say, "Advertising, once a gamble, has thus become, under direction, one of the safest of business ventures." And he further goes on to explain, again, why it's one of the safest ventures is because of this ability to test, track, and measure. And he goes on to say, especially with advertising, you don't have to go out and spend $100,000 on an advertising campaign on a commercial to see if your offer, if your product resonates with the market. You could start at a really small scale. You can test, you can tweak, you can measure, you can retest. And that's the beautiful thing about results-based, direct response, measurable advertising, again, is the ability to get results back and see what's working and see what isn't working. Now, again, he goes on to talk about the offer itself. Like I said, they started with coupon measuring, but he says the most common way is by use of a coupon. This is on the 13th page, at least of the book I'm looking at here specifically. It's the first chapter, but he says, "We offer a sample, a book, a free package, or something to induce direct replies. Thus, we learn the amount of action with each ad engenders." And then he goes on to say, "But those figures are not final. One ad may bring too many worthless replies, another replies that are valuable. So our final conclusions are always based on a cost per customer or cost per dollar of sale." So, and then he even goes on to say a little bit further. He says, "In a large agency, coupon returns are watched and recorded on hundreds of different lines meaning different products." He says, "In a single line, they're sometimes recorded on thousands of separate ads. Thus, we test everything pertaining to advertising. We answer nearly every possible question by multitudinous traced returns." Again, so some of his language is 100 years old, but the basic principle is marketing done from a direct response, measurable, trackable, traceable foundation, is one of thinking like an investor versus an expense, not just throwing money out there and hoping your business grows, but having a proper strategy in place where we're able to measure and track the results. So that's kind of principle number one, is looking at marketing as an investment and setting it up as an investment versus an investment meaning there's a traceable return to it where you can make changes as necessary, as opposed to just putting money out there and hoping for the best. Now, secondly, as it relates to Christianity, again, this is huge, again, from the faith component. Obviously, we want to be good stewards of time and resource and money, but as it relates to marketing, again, if we look at our business, number one, we answer the question, well, what is business in general, right? If we just can kind of think of that as a basic framework, what is business? Well, business is one entity delivering value to an individual or to another entity, right? Whether it's business to business operation or business to consumer. It's one entity delivering value to another entity, right? That's the basic gist of business, which is a glorious thing, right? And there is a monetary value associated with that transaction, right? And now when it comes to marketing, a lot of the times the business puts on the hat of making the marketing all about the business, when in reality, the marketing should be all about the consumer, because at the end of the day, I mean, as virtuous as that sounds, we want to serve another human being versus serving ourselves. At the end of the day, if we just understand people in general, including ourselves, at the end of the day, the consumer is always looking for their interest and not your business's interest, right? Whether or not your business succeeds or fails is not the customer's main priority, right? As much as they might love your business and want it to succeed, their main priority is getting value in exchange for the money that they're giving you, right? So that is the basic principle. And the further we get away from that in business and marketing, the harder it is to be able to have new customers come to our business. When our advertising is, we're the best, give us a call, that's hard to do, versus leading with value, leading with a lot of times information, free information that we can give the consumer in exchange for their information, right? In this case, if we're generating leads or in exchange for monetary value, that's a much easier route to go. Now, in the book, if you go to the third chapter, Claude talks about, what proper marketing is. So the first sentence he goes on to say, remember, and again, always, filter this through a scriptural lens, but just try to grab hold of the principle if you can. So he says, remember that people you address are selfish, as we all are. They care nothing about your interest or your profit. They seek services for themselves. And ignoring this fact is a common mistake and a costly mistake in advertising. Ads that say, in effect, buy my brand, give me the business you give to others, let me have the money, that's not a popular appeal. He says the best ads ask nobody to buy. That's useless. Often they do not even quote a price. They do not say that dealers handle the product. He goes on to say the ads are based entirely on service. They offer wanted information. They cite advantages to users. Perhaps they offer a sample or to buy the first package or to send something on approval so the customer may approve the claims without any cost or risk. So, and then he goes on to give specific examples of different businesses, ones that failed with a certain marketing approach and ones that did work. And I'll give you a quick example. So he gives an example of an electric sewing machine company. He said, the maker of an electric sewing machine motor found advertising difficult. So on good advice, he ceased soliciting a purchase. So instead of having guys go around knocking on doors saying, hey, would you buy my sewing machine? And the consumer's like, why? And, there's really nothing of value that was delivered except for, hey, buy my machine, right? A lot of us have done that in business of just running an ad saying, give us a call, fill out this form, and we'll call you and we'll come over to your house. We'll sell you a roof. We'll sell you plumbing. Whatever the case is, buy my stuff. They didn't have success doing that, trying to sell their sewing machines. So it said, on good advice, he ceased soliciting a purchase. Instead, he offered to send to any home through any dealer a motor for 1 week's use. With it, he says, would come a man to show how to operate the machine. The offer was, let us help you for a week without cost or obligation, said the ad. Such an offer was resistless, and about 9 in 10 of the trials led to sales. And So he goes on and gives other examples. But I think that, again, the important thing is to think of, if we can boil it all down, is to put ourselves in the shoes of the customer, right? Really, I mean, this is, if we make it even more simple and we look at it from the lens and principle of Scripture, we just take the golden rule, right? Doing unto others as we would want them to do unto us. And sometimes you're like, well, how do I put that into practice? Well, a lot of times you could just think to yourself, if I were my customer, what would I be thinking? What would be some of the worries or fears or concerns, or what would I be most interested in receiving? So if put yourself, let's say you run a roofing business, right? And you're in the business of, repairing or replacing roofs to make a living. Well, if you're a homeowner and your roof needs repaired, what are some of the things that you're thinking about, as an example? Well, one of the things you might be concerned with if a storm just came through is, hey, how bad is my roof? Do I actually need it replaced? If I call a roofing company off Google, are they just going to come and tell me that my roof needs replaced even if it doesn't, and I have to come out of pocket, or it's going to raise my insurance rates, or whatever the long list of fears and concerns is you might be worried about. And if that were you, what would be beneficial, right? And you might be thinking of, well, if you saw an ad come across your feed, or you're on social media, or via direct mail, with a roofing company offering to give you, a free guide or a free resource that actually lets you know, some key indicators that might help you see if you actually needed your roof replaced. And then maybe they also gave you like a free pricing report on what a roof could cost in your specific area without any obligation to call someone and have them come out to your house. Maybe just a little bit of that information would be something you'd be interested in opting in for, to receive, right? So you'd become a lead. You'd give your information in exchange for that information, right? This is just a kind of a high level idea, but this is kind of the basic way to think is, if I were a customer, what would I give my information for, right? And for a lot of you, if you have a good, customer database, this is a lot of research you could do. If you've had conversations with previous customers, you can ask them, hey, before you worked with us, what were some of the things you were thinking about before deciding to work with us? Again, in the case of Claude Hopkins, one of his clients, or one of his examples, again, selling sewing machines, directly to consumers was hard. So basically they said, hey, let's create a no-brainer offer, risk-free, for someone that's interested in a sewing machine, but maybe is kind of scared to purchase the thing because they don't know how to use it. It's probably a bigger investment at the time, and just weren't totally sure that they wanted it. But they were able to create an offer and said, hey, try it for a week. Not only that, we'll send somebody out to help you use the thing, and then after the week, you could decide if you want it. And he said 90% of the people decided to keep it, right? So that turned a unsuccessful marketing campaign into a successful marketing campaign. So that really becomes the foundation of, how would you turn a marketing campaign around for your business if it's failing, right? And that would be the main question to ask yourself is, what is my customer currently thinking about, right? In the sewing machines case, they probably thought about, this is a big investment. I'm not too sure. It's a little risky if I buy it. What if I don't know how to use it? So on and so forth. And so they were able to solve for that. So in your business, I think that would be a great question to ask yourself is, number one, what is my customer thinking, and how do I deliver serious value to them, and make the offer solve a problem that they have, and also make it risk-free, make it simple, make it easy for them to make a decision. So, and again, from the Christian perspective, what a great way to represent the kingdom too. When our business, the first interaction a consumer has with us through marketing is one of us delivering them value, thinking about what's in their best interest, giving them information, a free trial, whatever the case might be. What a great way to represent kind of kingdom principles by laying our life down, not saying, give us a call so we can sell you a sewing machine, so we can come over your house and sell your roof, right? Even if those things are inherently good for them and we could do a great job, we just have to remember that people are always thinking for what's in their best interest. And we need to be thinking about our consumers first before we think about our business, if that makes sense. Knowing if we can serve our customers well, we can make pressure-free offers to them that they would happily meet with us, or try a sample out, or give us their information in exchange for something useful, that will, as a result, grow our business. Not only that, it'll give you the ability to have measurable, traceable results, because we could see, hey, how many trials did we get? How many leads did we get through the funnel? So on and so forth. So that is the basic principle, and I'll just leave it with this before I sign off here. When Claude finishes this third chapter here, he says, people can be coaxed but not driven. Whatever they do to please themselves. Many fewer mistakes would be made if in advertising if these facts were never forgotten. So we have to remember, again, consumers are trying to figure out how to get the most for their dollar. They want to make sure they're making the best decision. Picking up a phone and calling a business they've never heard of before is just a really difficult task to try and get somebody to do. And life is a lot easier, and business could be a lot more fruitful if we just put ourselves in the position of the consumer and just think, what's in the best interest of the consumer? What are they thinking about? How can we just meet them where they're at? For other businesses where maybe the ticket price of the product is not super expensive, like you're selling products that are under $100, sometimes it's a little bit easier. You don't have to think too much about the offer. Sometimes it's just tweaking the price or the messaging, or creating risk-free trials. Of course, lots of people do money-back guarantees. That's not a new concept. Again, free trials, creating bundles, discounts, etc. But the tactics are not as important as the basic fundamental principle of, again, thinking what's in the best interest of the consumer, creating your advertising, your messaging, your copy, your offers, your pricing structures, your lead magnets, your offers, how you position your product from the perspective of the consumer and not from the perspective of what you want out of the transaction, if that makes sense. So that's those are some of the basic principles I just wanted to talk about today. Just genuinely trying to use business to serve people, giving people as much value as we can on the front end, knowing that in the long run, that absolutely will pay off. And it's just really, it's most effective in general. And it's also a kingdom principle, which is great all around. So that is it for today's podcast. Again, I'd encourage you to pick up Scientific Advertising throughout the next episodes. We'll talk more about these different principles. I'll talk about some learning experiences I've had on my own, and we'll just go from there. So I just wanted to again thank you for your time, and I will see you on the next episode.